Coming up, Senator Ted Cruz has started his 2016 presidential campaign today. Find out about the policies he opposes and stands for. Also, find out about how President Obama is encouraging students to study science and technology. District Wire News starts right now. Good evening, I'm Shondalise Duster. Last week, people in the American university community were surprised to find out the university is under federal investigation for violating a law called Title IX. James Dubeck finds out what it means for AU.
When most people think of a law called Title IX, they think sports. That's because Title IX is part of a 1972 law that prohibits sex discrimination in schools. The change was most noticeable in high school and college sports. But in 2011, the Department of Education said that schools were also responsible for taking steps to stop sexual harassment and violence. If someone thinks a school is being discriminating, they can file a complaint with the Department of Education. Rob Hradsky's job is to make sure AU is following that law. As the Title IX coordinator, he's overseen changes to help improve AU's sexual assault policies.
We are again, working in the direction of refinement and tweaking to make sure we are doing the best that we can do.
But last week, he said AU is joining the 104 colleges the government's investigating around the country. One of AU's programs to help assault survivors is the Confidential Victim Advocate. Daniel Rappaport thinks that recent media attention to school sexual assault has given more people courage to come forward.
But it's not that amount of people experiencing this is necessarily increased, but they've been able to access more resources because we're creating an environment not only where we provide those resources, but where it's safer to come forward.
In the next few months, AU expects the department to investigate and make recommendations. James Dubeck, District Wire News.
A former female Twitter employee is suing the social media site for gender discrimination. Software engineer Tina Zhuang says Twitter's promotion process favors men, and the company has no formal procedure for granting promotions. Although Twitter says it is committed to creating a diverse workplace, she says the company relies on a secretive shoulder tap process when it comes to promotions. Zhuang says she was overlooked for a promotion and was fired after she complained about it. Twitter maintains that she voluntarily left the company. Starbucks has decided to stop writing "Race Together" on their coffee cups. The initiative only lasted a week and was designed to start a conversation with their customers about race. But many feel like this conversation came at the wrong time. The campaign debuted on the heels of nationwide protests dealing with the killings of Black men. The 2016 presidential race is officially underway as Republican Senator Ted Cruz formally announced his case for candidacy this morning. Christina Anamashon has more on how local GOP members are reacting.
Yes, after weeks of speculation, Ted Cruz has finally confirmed his race for the Oval Office.
Today, I am announcing that I'm running for President of the United States.
2016 race for the White House has its first official candidate. Ted Cruz formally announced his campaign this morning to a crowd of 10,000 people at Liberty University. The Texas senator's media blitz for the White House began with a Twitter post featuring his first campaign video.
It's a time for truth, a time to rise to the challenge, just as Americans have always done.
Cruz became a Tea Party favorite with his strong opposition to Obama and his executive policies. His 21-hour filibuster speech contributed to last year's government shutdown. A recent political survey this month only garnered Cruz 4% of support among Republicans in a hypothetical primary.
Somebody like Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, whatever, people who are sort of, early favorites have no real need to get out and, sort of announce themselves. In a way, it would almost be signaling weakness to do that.
Young Republicans are looking for candidates like Cruz to prove themselves this upcoming campaign season.
We have seen Ted Cruz become a remarkable statesman. He's done great work in the Senate in Texas. However, there will be a disconnect with the millennial base here. You're not seeing as many conservatives, millennials, that are as conservative as someone like him.
A major mantra during Cruz's speech was that he wanted us to reclaim the Constitution. So moving ahead during the campaign trail, we're going to see if he can bridge the gap with that mantra and bring in those other GOP candidates.
Thanks, Christina. At the White House Science Fair today, Obama is announcing more than $240 million in pledges to encourage more students to study science, technology, engineering, and math, the 4 subjects known as STEM. This year's science fair focuses on creating opportunities for underrepresented youth. Part of Obama's pledge includes a $90 million campaign to support minorities and girls to pursue STEM education programs. More than 35 students will also present projects at the science fair today. It's the 5th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act, and not everyone is celebrating. Obamacare has been under constant scrutiny by Republicans, and they have voted to repeal it since it was signed into law. Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the law has been one rolling disaster after another. President Obama said in a statement that more than 16 million uninsured Americans have gained the security of health insurance since the law has passed. Family and friends of former Congressman Walter Fauntroy believe he has traveled out the country to avoid legal trouble. Fauntroy is thought to be in Dubai. The civil rights leader has a warrant out for his arrest after a check he wrote for $50,000 bounced. The check was to cover expenses for an inaugural event of President Obama. Earlier this month, Fauntroy and his wife filed for bankruptcy. Fauntroy is also facing possible foreclosure of his home. CIA Director John Brennan says ISIS militants are losing momentum in Iraq and Syria. But other areas like Tunisia and Yemen recently fell victim to the terrorist group's attacks. The United States has been conducting airstrikes against ISIS since last summer. But as those attacks continue, Brennan says the U.S. has since gained extensive knowledge of Iran's nuclear capabilities and doesn't consider the country to be an ally. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is on his first visit to Washington since the presidency. He will spend 4 days in Washington and 1 day in New York this week. He is meeting with President Obama on Tuesday. U.S. troop levels, ISIS threats, corruption, Taliban and Pakistan relations are on the top of the agenda. First Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, died at the age of 91 today after battling against pneumonia for several weeks in the hospital. Lee Kuan Yew was the founder of the People's Action Party, and under his governance, there was a restriction on freedom of speech in Singapore. A state funeral will be held for him after a week of mourning. Kerry Washington, the star of the popular TV show Scandal, stood up for same-sex rights in her acceptance speech for the annual GLAAD Media Awards on Saturday night. She accepted the Vanguard Award for promoting equality and talked about the need for more representation of the LGBT community in Hollywood. Washington also encouraged all minority groups to come together and support one another's success rather than compete against each other for spots in the Hollywood scene.
We have been pitted against each other and made to feel like there are limited seats at the table for those of us who fall into the category of other. As a result, we have become afraid of one another. We compete with one another. We judge one another. Sometimes we betray one another. Sometimes even within our own communities, we designate who among us is best suited to represent us and who really shouldn't even be invited to the party. As others, we are taught that to be successful, we must reject.
Washington's speech brought a cheering crowd to their feet. Lake Braddock Secondary School. New data from the Department of Education shows students across the country are deciding to finish school. Piola Thomas has more about the record high graduation rate.
More American students are graduating from high school, according to new data from the U.S. Department of Education. During the 2012-2013 school year, 81% of high school students graduated in 4 years, and the achievement gap between whites, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans is thinning. The overall graduation rate in D.C. was 58%, and it has increased by 2%. Julie Sarah Boyd, AU Director of Student Education, says more needs to be done.
We need to celebrate it, but we also need to recognize what needs to be done and recognize that we're not doing enough.
Many of DC's highly selective schools had graduation rates of more than 90%. But DC's charter schools' graduation rate dropped more than 7%, and Hospitality High School in Northwest DC had the lowest graduation rate in the district at 32%. Boyd says the graduation rate in DC is an improvement, but as an educator, a 2% improvement is not enough. Piola Thomas, District Wire News.
A group of civil rights organizations are calling for Congress to continue standardized testing when they rewrite the No Child Left Behind law. No Child Left Behind expired in 2007, and the rewriting of the bill has been delayed in Congress. Critics of the bill say that it has resulted in major achievement gaps in the classroom. However, civil rights organizations say that gaps have forced school districts to pay more attention to students with disabilities. Sweetbriar College, one of 4 same-sex schools in Virginia, will shut down at the end of this academic year. Alexis Williams has more on why many are asking if there is still a place for women's-only institutions.
129 students prepared to graduate from Sweetbriar College this spring. More than 500 are scrambling to find a new home. On February 28th, the school's board of directors unanimously voted to close the women's institution due to mounting financial problems and a lack of interest in same-sex education. Freshman Katie Mosteller says she and her peers were blindsided by the news.
Once President James said that Sweetbriar will be shutting down, there was like a blood-curdling scream from everybody.
Mosteller says the school's main issue is its limited amount of students. Amy Ciccone, Director of College Guidance at Stone Ridge, an all-girls high school in Bethesda, Maryland, says there's more to closing a school than numbers.
It has to do with money, the competition for students, the overwhelming number of small liberal arts colleges that are all vying for the same student.
Members of the Sweetbriar community say there are many ways to keep the school open. Ellen Patera is a part of the board of directors for Saving Sweetbriar.
Women's education is critical. It just opens a world to them that they may not have known existed.
The school is offering teach-out agreements with local colleges to help students transfer. Mosteller says she's fortunate to transfer to Virginia Tech, but it won't be the same.
I'm scared to come back home and see how empty it is here when no one's here, and it's just going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. Yeah.
Sweetbriar will close its doors on August 25th. In Virginia, for District Wire News, I'm Alexis Williams.
Coming up, American University graduate students looking for housing have a cheaper option around the corner that they don't know about.